in the morning. So I will lead us off. Hey, again, thanks for joining us. It's great. Always like to be able to talk with you people and get some ideas from you, as well as share our information back to you as well. Want to let you know we did have our Township Day at the Capitol last Wednesday and Thursday. Great turnout. We had, I believe, 96 officers show up, and so which was just wonderful. Had a lot of meetings. In fact, there was there's a hearing that was done for broadband, and Matt was actually mentioned during that meeting that the legislators actually got to talk to some township officials, and so it's just kind of nice that we're being talked about in the course of those meetings. We did have a hearing last week, Wednesday, on PILT, and actually, again, one of our township officers who was in attendance did speak and testify at that Senate hearing, so which was nice as well. So we definitely do appreciate that involvement. But again, we're going to have this again next year, and so we do look forward to having even more people. So we had 96, almost 100. It'd be nice if we could maybe even double that next year. And like I said, we had a lot of legislators talking to us, a lot of good meetings, and they want to see us. And it's kind of fun. I mean, I hope it's fun for those who are in attendance. We had Wednesday night, we had the governor speak to us. So he gave a nice speech. He's probably with us for about 45 minutes or so. And then Thursday, we had various chairs of the Transportation Committee of the Senate, Senator Dibble, chair of the Election Committee in the Senate, Senator Carlson speak, and Julie Blaha and a few others speaking as well. So if you want to get some really good information, really get down to the people who are making these decisions, it's a great place to be. Legislative stuff that we have going on during the legislative session, obviously transportation funding. We are looking at $40 million. Those of you who may remember the last couple of years, we have been going after 20 million. We reworked our numbers, figured out what exactly that means on a per mile basis, or 55,500 miles of roads that we as a collective maintain in the state of Minnesota. 20 million doesn't go a long way. 40 million doesn't go a long way. We all know that, especially if you bought gravel recently. So we're definitely going after 40 million. We don't care how it gets here. Last year, the bill that was talked about was in the auto parts and repair sales tax genre, but we're looking at possibly even car rentals, whether it be motor vehicle tab increase. However it gets to us, we really don't care. Give me 1 second. I just want to make sure that my phone's kind of blowing up here. No, okay. Anyways, so we also have annexation. In fact, I'm going to be speaking in front of the Senate local or state and local gov committee today at 12:30, and about our legislative priorities and focusing on, especially with that committee, on annexation and kind of letting them know where our priorities are. And what we are looking there too, we're looking to add some fairness, and that's basically the talking point that we're trying to get out to our legislators, especially the new ones, and but the veterans need to know it as well. We're just looking at fairness. We need to be on more of a level playing field with cities. We're not against annexation, and that's the other key item that I'm trying to get across to legislators as well as our own township officials, is that we are not opposed to annexation. We know it's going to happen. We know it's going to be on our backs. We're the ones who have the land, and but it has to be smart. It has to make sense. It has to be an economic reason for development and whatnot that's going to be happening for that to occur. Otherwise, those of us who live in township, we do that for a reason. We want that lifestyle. We want our space, and so for somebody else to be able to tell us that, hey, now you have to live in a city, that just doesn't fly with, at least not most of us, definitely not with me. I mentioned PILT. We are going strong at PILT. We do have a we do have a bill out there for that was drafted by Representative Listegar. And so if any of you know him, please give him a call. Tell him thanks for carrying that bill, and just tell him that you do support it. PILT, for those of you who may not know, is payment in lieu of taxes. And essentially what it is when our state takes private land public and whether it be Pheasants Forever or through that type of conservation and so forth, the taxes that the townships derive from that go down over time. And because the assessed value is considered, because there's nothing that's being used for it, it's nothing done with it, it's not being productive. They put the value of that land, they decrease it. So of course your taxes decrease. We don't think that's right. And so because if that same land were in private hands, there would be more taxes being generated from that. So why should the government be different just because they're the ones who bought it? And then the townships are the ones who have to scramble to make ends meet with their other obligations. Excuse me. We do have a lot of townships, especially up in the northern region, and maybe you're one of them, if you're on this call, that has an overabundance of pilt land in your township. Well, that can really be a hardship for you guys. And so we're trying to correct that. It's only fair. The feedback that we're getting when we talk to legislators about this is very positive. And so we'll see how it goes. I believe that Steve is talking to the Senate committee. He talked last week with the House committee. And so tomorrow is the tax committee on PILT, and so he'll be testifying on that again. So we're hoping for good things on that. At least we're getting some really good exposure on it. Other things that we have, construction sales tax, just to make it easier for townships to be able to get reimbursement and not have to get reimbursement. You just don't pay it in the first place when you're building roads and capital equipment, new town hall, that kind of thing. So we just want to make it easier for you, and that is all the associations are on board with that. We have the league, we have Coalition of Small Cities, the School Board Association, counties, so forth. So everyone is in favor of this. Para, that one I think I talked about last time too, is just for appointed officers, who were elected and who may not be able to participate in it when you stop being elected and you become appointed. I didn't know that was a thing, and apparently it is a thing. So we're trying to make that or rectify that as well. Road turnbacks. Road turnbacks is when the county turned back roads to the townships, and that's where we actually have one township, Lima Township in Cass County, who actually dissolved on January 1 of this year because the county turned back a road to them. They only had a $4,000 annual levy, and the annual maintenance on this road equaled about $13,000 a year. So of course they couldn't afford that, and so they dissolved. And not only does that stink in and of itself, so there's a debt that was put onto this township that was unmanageable. But now that county, and I still have to call this county, but that county can now dip into the township road and bridge fund for the share of maintenance that the town otherwise would have received, and the county can now use that money to maintain that road. So it's basically has become a source of revenue for that county, which again I just don't think is fair. But we need to find out more information on that as well. Broadband, of course, we're always looking for broadband. Our goal or our stance on broadband is to work on the unserved areas first. We know that there are a lot of people that are underserved and that you have slow speeds. It would be awesome if we had everybody on fiber, and eventually that is the goal, to have wireline. But right now there are so many sectors that are in our state that just have absolutely no ability of any type of broadband at all. And so we're hoping, that's what we're asking for, is for the focus to be on the unserved, and then from there get back to the underserved and get everybody's speeds up to where they should be. There was a document that was sent to me, and I'm going to see if I can share that in the chat. I think this is the right. Yep, this is it. What this link is asking people, the FCC, you can actually talk to the FCC, talk about your experience, your bad internet. I find it ironic that it's an online form to tell the FCC if you have no internet. So I'm really not sure how that works. You got to go to an internet place in order to talk about it. But anyways, if you are having intermittent or just substandard internet, we want to make sure that the FCC knows about that. And of course, those who don't have internet, tell your neighbors about this. We're going to put this in our next Insider magazine, and we'll have the form printed in there too, so that those who don't have internet can mail it in. I hope that there's an address there, or at least let them know about it so that they can drive to a place where there is broadband, and they can submit the form that way. Made the use of a friendly township that's willing to let them use their computer. Next items that we have: truck weight exemptions. Of course, we're always trying to fight that every year. Essentially, what I'm talking to legislators about is that we, to have all these excess weight trucks, or any trucks for that matter, to be on, and I'm talking about semis here, or even big farm equipment, to be on these roads that are 5 to 6 ton roads, it just doesn't cut it. We really need to have a standard 10-ton roads for those arterial roads that are going to be used for that type of major traffic, especially. And so that's kind of the thought process that we're putting in the legislators' heads. FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. Some of you may have heard about this. That's is of concern. It's just something that we're watching. We're not really acting at this point in time. Right now, it has a proposal in there that would essentially allow up to 24 weeks of paid leave to those people who are taking care of their families. And or from my understanding, and I've not read the bill. The bill is hundreds of pages long, and of course it's the long pages, not the 11 and a half by 8 or 8 and a half by 11. But anyways, what my understanding is that it doesn't have to be a family member. It can be a friend. It can be. It's very liberal when it comes to what I mean by liberal, loose. In its definition of who you're going to be taking care of, what's a family member, and so forth. But as it stands right now, there is an amendment that's put on this bill that would exempt entities that have 50 or fewer employees. It doesn't mean that amendment's going to stay, and but the last I heard that amendment is still in this bill, and that would at least exempt our townships. It's not going to do much for businesses that have more than that. But my concern right now is you township folks. And so just let you know about that. Last thing I have here is if some of you, all of you get the Insider magazine, or at least you should. If you read my article, I did talk about 5 townships, and now it's down to 4 now, but 5 townships that were expelled from the organization. And this is, I think I may have talked about this on the last Township Tuesday. And it is now down to 4. Flum Township, which was part of the initial 5, they have repaired their relationship with the organization, and they are now back in good standing. But there are still 4 that have been expelled, and as far as I can tell, they are not looking to make repairs and make that relationship good again. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, or if you want to ask it here, that's fine too. I think my article pretty much outlines it pretty well, and but I'm sure there may be other questions that are coming from that as well. So just kind of let me know about that. I see the concern we have, just looking in the chat here, the concern we have is when we have electric vehicles and the weight is considerably heavier. Yes, current. There's no way to tax electric vehicles. Right now there isn't. They are talking about it. And essentially what they're talking about, well, a couple of different things. One is having excise taxes on the voltage that you're using to refuel your electric vehicles. Another thing is a vehicle mileage tax. And of course that would impact all vehicles, combustion engines, as well as electric. And so there are different things that are on the table at this point in time. And I think there's actually more than that too. Diane said that apparently the Insiders has not yet been sent. We received the calendar issue, but not really. Okay, everything has been sent, and I know I received my magazine at my house, and actually at least a week ago or so. And one thing you may want to do, if you normally get the Insider, then you should get it. If for whatever reason you haven't received it in a while, there might be something with the data that we have on your address, especially if you're a newer officer. And we definitely want to make sure that we have all correct information. And that actually brings up a good point too. Please make sure, we have the Township Day, March elections coming up, and we just got over the November elections. If you have new officers, please make sure that you get that data into our office so we can have all current information on every officer in your township. So we can make sure that we're giving the information to the appropriate people and that everyone is able to do that. Okay, but anyways, if you have any other questions, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to pass it off to either Steve or Graham. I'm not sure which one's going to take the baton.
Graham.
All right, Graham, here we go.
Well, good morning, everyone. So I had a couple of requests for topics to cover today. Specifically, there's a request for covering credit cards and a request for doing a brief overview on conflicts of interest.
Graham, I don't know if you saw it. Looks like we have a hard stop in about 10 minutes. So if you don't have time for everything, don't do everything. Just one of those timing things today.
Fair enough. Well, let's do credit cards then, because that one is nice and easy. All righty. So let me just get my screen going here. Just a moment. Thank you for your patience, folks. All right, here we go. So, credit cards. Once upon a time, these things were fairly dodgy. The law around public debt is specific and detailed and admits very little in the way of flexibility, but obviously things changed, the economy moved on, and now we live in a world where they're basically the normal way of handling a lot of small ball transactions. Back in 2001, the legislature passed a law clarifying this, creating a new power, I would say. And that law is up on your screen now. It's Minnesota Statute 471.382, which permits town board to authorize the use of a credit card by officers, employees, otherwise authorized to make purchases on behalf of the town. In broad strokes, the town has the authority to turn this power, the town board has the authority to turn this power on and off for individual officers. If the board does not authorize a credit card purchase, then the officer or employee who made that purchase is personally liable for the amount. Now, we do have some recommendations about how to handle these things as an association. One of those is develop a clear policy to be about what expenditures are to be allowed and the circumstances under which they are to be allowed, because of course, nobody wants to be the guy who's holding the bag after they thought a purchase was going to be okay and the rest of the board doesn't think it's going to be okay. Don't want that situation to happen to anyone. So we recommend that you develop a very clear policy to make it clear in advance what is okay to use this thing for. We recommend that you keep the credit limit low enough so that the risks associated with these things are relatively stable and easy to handle. And we also recommend that this thing get paid off on a monthly basis. Now, that is because the authority to use credit cards, if you check that statute, it doesn't authorize the creation of a new form of debt for the town. All it did was create a new method of payment. So this is per the state auditor's board rather than the association or the state auditor's office. They take the position that the board should adopt a policy of paying off that credit card on a monthly basis to avoid issues with public debt. Now, there are a potential, some serious pitfalls for using these things. First, of course, as we were talking about just now, if the board doesn't approve the transaction, then you're talking about individual liability potentially for the officer. Second, of course, they have to comply with the normal expenditure statutes, which means that you need a specific statutory authorization and you need a public purpose. So, for example, that means that Minnesota law claims presented for payment to a township must be in writing and itemized. There is authority out there saying that a credit card statement is not sufficiently detailed to comply with that statute. So for example, you're going to need to keep the receipts themselves, not just the credit card statement. A lot of folks don't or find that one counterintuitive, but it falls out of the fact that this is, as we were talking about just earlier, this is a new method of payment. It doesn't create any exceptions for any other statutes. It doesn't create a new mechanism for debt. But of course, this is some fairly small ball stuff. The last and biggest pitfall comes to us from a case called State versus Norman. This was a Minnesota Court of Appeals case from 2012 regarding the use of credit cards. And the statute they were interpreting is a criminal statute. You can, generally speaking, when the name of a case starts with state, something has gone very wrong for a township officer. And the specific statute they were interpreting was 609.455, which prohibits false claims against the government. Now that statute reads in its totality: a public officer or employee who audits, allows, or pays any kind of claim or demand made upon the state or a subdivision thereof, which the public officer knows is false or fraudulent in whole or in part, may be sentenced to, since this is a felony sentence, imprisonment for not more than 5 years or a payment of a fine of not more than $10,000 or both. Now, Norman was a city manager for the city of Albert Lea down in southern Minnesota. He had a contract with the city to provide for his relocation expenses. And during his time, he bought some personal stuff. It was, I believe it was a refrigerator. He bought his wife some shoes. There were some other incidentals. For me, the interesting thing about this case is that he did pay the city back. He submitted this credit card statement with a personal check covering the expenses, and in a fairly harsh result, in my view, the Court of Appeals held that was not sufficient. They held that, Norman argues, so the language there on your screen is what they wrote. The defendant argues that because he reimbursed the city for the charges, he did not allow the claim within the meaning of the statute. But he fails to explain how after the fact reimbursement negates his earlier allowance of the claim. And they upheld his conviction under this felony statute for doing that. So you want to be very careful with these things if you guys decide to allow them. So private purposes are absolutely prohibited, and an aggressive enough county attorney can bring charges successfully, even if the officer in question reimburses them later. So that was the great big hairy risk that I felt like needs to be warned, or that officers need to be aware of whenever this topic comes up. Now it looks like we've got a quick note from Heather here. Have to drop for another call. If you have any questions, please reach out to mattatiinsurance@mntownships.org. And she reminds us that audits are due on February 15th. Now, I did have the conflict of interest presentation that was asked for, but I do not think we have time for that. So let's get right to questions. Has anybody got any questions about the credit card statutes, the credit card restrictions that we talked about just now? See, Steve's got a hand raised.
I do. Was there a hand raised? All right. I think we're probably at our stop time here because I don't think we can jump forward. Was that all you had on this one, Graham?
Well, the other presentation is going to be a lot longer than 10 minutes. So,
that's all right. They have to tune in on the next time to get the second installment. Okay. So sorry to cut it short, everybody, today. We just have a scheduling thing that we have going on. So we're going to end here. Thank you for joining us, even though it's short today. Call, email with the questions. If they can't wait, please call, email with the questions. We'll take care of them. So otherwise, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you all.
Have a good one, everyone.